Okay, Shalom Aleichem, welcome back everyone. Baruch Shechianu V'Kiyanu L'Zman Hazeh. We are Sefer Bamidbar, Parashat Bamidbar, marching along to Matan Torah, to Kabbalat Torah. Bezat Hashem should come to us in good health. Sefer Bamidbar, we learn a lot of lessons in Sefer Bamidbar. I want to start off with an idea that was very something that Rav Pam, Zechat Tzadik Libracha, would speak about very often. And this is the concept that the Mesilat Yesharim talks about, that's known as Mishkal HaSidut. In this week's Parashat, we're told that the Bnei Kahat, the children of Kahat, the Pasuk says to Moshe Rabbeinu to make sure that they don't die out. Okay, this is in chapter 4, right, the Levi'im, Bnei Kahat, chapter 4, Pasuk Yud-Het, Yud-Het. Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, Al tachritu et shevet mishpachot ha-Kihatim mitoch ha-Levi'im. Make sure that the tribe of the Kohatim, the Kahats, from Kahat, make sure they don't die out. They not be cut off from among the Levi'im. So explains the Midrash Rabbah, in 5.1, Midrash Rabbah, Bamidbar Rabbah, explains why is it that they're dying out. Midrash Rabbah says a very interesting thing. The Bnei Kahat, they were in charge and responsible to carry the Kalim of the Mishkan. In the Midbar, they traveled from spot to spot, and they needed to carry it. And the Bnei Kahat were responsible to carry the Shulchan, the Menorah, the Mizbeach. And one of the things they were responsible to carry for was the Aron HaKodesh. So what happened? The Midrash says, every member of Kahat, of the family of Kahat, they knew that if you carry the Aron, you get a lot of bracha. You get a lot of reward, a lot of blessings. So everybody wanted it. So what happened? Everyone started to run for it, and everyone said, I got to it first. Everyone was fighting. This led to people screaming and yelling, and when this happened in front of the Aron, the Shekhinah punished them, and they started to die. So Hashem comes to Moshe and Aharon, and he tells them, give each member of the Kahat family a specific task, thereby preventing arguments of who would have the privilege to carry the Aron. The Mesilat Yesharim says, wow, look at this. What should have been a great mitzvah of carrying the Kalim of the Mishkan turned to be a Chilul Hashem. They started arguing and fighting. If they would have used the concept that he calls Mishkal HaSidut, the weighing of the actions, to see what am I really accomplishing? Is this really the kavod that I want to give Hashem? Or is this taking away from the kavod? Mishkal HaSidut means you have to weigh your actions. Because the Yetzer Hara has a very unique way to make averot look like mitzvot. I'm doing it for kavod. I'm doing it for kavod Hashem, l'shem shemayim. Matzmachok l'shem shemayim, he says. And it's not. It's rather he has a different agenda. But that's what the Yetzer Hara does. Therefore, a person has to use this Mishkal HaSidut. He has to look to see in what I'm doing really the right thing or not. There was a great giant, a Musar giant, Rav Yisrael Salanter, Zechat Tzadik Libracha. He was once washing his hands, and he was using a keli, the cup, and it wasn't fully full. It wasn't up to the top. And one of his students said, Rabbi, don't you know the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat that quotes Reb Chizda, who says if a person uses a big cup in the Tiyal Yadayim, overflowing, then he'll have a lot of parnasah, he'll have a lot of blessings. Why don't you do that? And Rav Yisrael Salanter answered famously, you're right. Can you imagine? He says, I have to make this maid go out because I want to be a Hasid and I want to have brachot. And so I have to wash with fistfuls of water. Whereas someone else has to go through all that trouble. That's not called doing a mitzvah. You have to use Mishkala Hasidut. Another famous story, the Rishal Salanter. He was once invited to spend Shabbat with one of his wealthy students. But before he agreed to come, he asked, how does it go Friday night? And the student said, oh, the kashrut is amazing. And everything goes good. And we say Divrei Torah and we sing and this and that. And Yishal said, who cooks all the food? He says, I have a widow of one of the Talmidei Chachamim. She needed a job, so she works for me. She cooks. So Rishal Salanta said, I agreed to come to you with one condition. We eat everything, we finish. And then after we're done, we can sit, sing, and share Divrei Torah and everything. And came that Shabbat, and they agreed to Rishal Salanta, and they did that, they finished the Suda. And then afterwards they started. And this widow comes out, and she says to the rabbi, you should be blessed. And the rabbi says, I'm so sorry that I made everything rush today. She says, no, you should have bracha. I wish you would come every Shabbat. Friday is the most difficult night. I want to go home and sleep, but they have Zmirot, they have Divrei Torah, their Suda takes hours. All while I have to wait around to clean up at the end. But this week, oh Hashem, I finished early. I can go home and sleep. We have to understand that when you do a mitzvah, you have to look at all the sides, all the angles, to know, am I doing really the right thing or not? The Hafetz Chaim, when he would have guests on Friday night, I'm not saying that we should do this, but this is what he did. The Hafetz Chaim didn't sing Shalom Aleichem. He skipped it. And he would sing it during the Suda. So someone asked him, why do you do that? He says, I have here people, poor people who didn't eat. They're all hungry. The Malachim could wait for Shalom Aleichem. The Malachim can wait, the angels can wait. But these people can't wait. They need to eat. So he skipped straight to Kiddush. This is an ideal that you have to think beyond. You have to think a little more. And we don't do that sometimes. Sometimes we're so focused on the right in front of us instead of realizing how far this really goes. There's other examples of Mishkala Hasidut that I wanted to share. Listen to this one, Rabotai. The Manchester Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Yehuda Segal, said that although he felt that the proper place to wash the hands for the morning, Netilat Yadayim, is right by the bed. He says, all the years that my wife was alive, I never did it inside the room. I always did it outside. So a student said, if the halacha is the best to do it by your bed, why didn't you do it there? He said, because if I would have done it that way, I would have woken up my wife with all the noise. So Mishkala Hasidut. My washing the hands, waking her up, that's not worth it. Shlomo Zalman Auerbach was preparing to recite Birkat Ilanot. And someone pointed out to him there was only one tree in the garden where he's about to make the mitzvah. And the mitzvah is better to do when there's two trees. And Shlomo Zalman told his student, there's a different Hidur mitzvah that I'm doing. There's a different beautification of the mitzvah. He says, look at the window and notice the smile on the face of the almana, of the widow who lives in this house. It brings her much joy when she sees that we choose her tree to make a bracha. Rav Segal once, the Manchester Rosh Yeshiva, was once coming to America for Pesach, and he had several boxes of matzos. And his student accompanying him suggested he pack the boxes in such a way that it would not be obvious to the custom agents, and therefore they would avoid paying taxes on them. Rav Segal looked at him in horror, the look of a man who was involved in Mishkala Hasidut. When Rav Segal did, in fact, end up paying taxes for those boxes, he turned to his student and said, another Hidur mitzvah, another beautification of mitzvah by paying for the taxes. Abutai, one more example. Over 60 years ago, before Rosh Hashanah, Rav Pam told his class, my landlord wants to raise our rent by $5 a month, but I can't afford it. I have two options. The first is to offer him half of that, $2.05, and he'll probably accept it. $2.50. He said he'll probably accept it. But I have an idea. Every year I buy the Arba Minim for Sukkot. This year maybe I can use the shul's Arba Minim and save $30, and that way I can pay the rent. What do you think? He asked his students. What's more important? Having Arba Minim or having shalom, peace, having integrity, and paying the raise? And sometimes we don't think on these lines. Sometimes we don't think on these lines, but this is the way we have to think. One more, Rabotai, one more. The Gemara in Berachot tells us a delegation approached Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, and they asked him to accept the post of Nasi, to lead Klal Yisrael. And what did Rabbi Elazar say? I have to go ask my wife. He said, I have to ask my wife. What does this mean? So they explained, the Farshim explained that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was teaching. He says, a married man must set aside special time to be with his wife. From his wife, he'd be more involved with the tzibur, more involved with the community. And he felt he couldn't do that without consulting his wife, getting her approval to spend less time with her in order to spend more time with the community. A person has to think what he's doing. A person has to really stop and think. We don't want, chas v'shalom, as it says in the Yerushalmi, oy lo lazeh shenaaseh sa negoro kategoro. Someone's source of merit turns opposite him. The defender becomes the prosecutor. He's trying to do a mitzvah, and instead, it becomes an avirah, and it works against him. Has v'shalom. Okay, Abotai, that was our first lesson on this week's Parashat. I want to move to our second lesson. In this week's Parashat, we find something very interesting. We find in the beginning of the Parashat, in Perek Aleph, Pasuk Yud Daled, it says, listing the names of the heads of the tribes that stood on top of all the tribes, right? That says, Yud Daled, Legod Eliasaph ben Deuel. So, Shevet Gad, they had Eliasaph ben Deuel. Then, in Perek Bet, Pasuk Yud Daled, it mentions the Nasim again, the heads of the tribes. And it says, Umate Gad, V'nasi livnei Gad, Eliasaph ben Reuel. It switches his name from Deuel to Reuel. So says the Chidah, B'Shem the Imrei Noam. He says, what an amazing idea. You know, when the tribe of Dan was appointed as leader of one of the 4 subdivisions of the camp, right? Each camp, right? There was 4 all around, 3, 3, 3, 3, all around the Mishkan. And each one had a head. Of those 3, one was in charge. And Dan was made in charge. And God, Shevet God, could have argued that they too should be the leader of their subdivision. For their forebear, God was Zilpah's firstborn, just as Dan was Bilhah's firstborn. But the Nasi of the tribe of God did not utter a word. He didn't say anything. So what happened? Hashem changed his name from Deuel to Reuel, to the friend of Hashem. So much so that Moshe Rabbeinu was buried in the portion of the tribe of God. Reuel, who is the friend of Hashem, if not Moshe Rabbeinu? But Reuven, Eliasaph ben Reuel becomes a friend of Hashem. What does it mean to be a friend of Hashem? Obviously, if you're a partner with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you're a friend with Hashem, Hashem makes you very successful. Hashem makes you, everything work out for you. There's a famous story about the Stei Hamed. Who was this Sdei Hamed? Rabbi Chaim Hiskiya Medini. He wrote a 10-volume encyclopedia of halacha, of every topic in halacha, all the sources, everything. And this is before the time of computers. All right, this guy was a genius. So you remember every source and put it down in a book, right? And usually, even today's when they have computers and encyclopedias, you have a whole team working on it, like tons of people. And Sdei Hamed did it all himself, but how did it happen? The Sdei Hamed, he says about himself, he writes that when he started learning, he was learning, but he didn't have a phenomenal memory. He wasn't amazingly a genius. He was learning. He says, but something happened. It changed everything. He wasn't Kolel. He was learning. And one of his so-called friends got jealous of him. So there was an Arab woman that was working as a cleaning lady in the Kolel. And the friend went over and gave her some money and said, I'll give you more if you tell everybody that this Rabbi Chaim Hiskiya Medini is playing around with you, that he's making sins with her. And so she sees the money, she wants more, so she starts to spread the rumor. So much so that the Sdei Hamed, Rabbi Chaim Hiskiya Medini, had no choice but to run away. It became that bad. The rumors were flying everywhere, and people couldn't believe it. Look at this guy. He sits in the Bamidbar, but meanwhile he's doing all sorts of sins. Happened was that this friend, so-called, who was paying her, ran out of money to continue to pay her, and she ran out of a job. And she's not going to keep her in the yeshiva if she's involved in such things. So she found this Sdei Hamed, Chaim Hiskiya Medini, and said, "Please go and tell them that it's not true, and I'll tell them it's not true. But I need my job back." And Chaim Hiskiya said, "You know what? Let's do it. This is my opportunity to clear my name." She's going to say she was all a lie. She was paid for it. But then he stopped. He said, "You know what? I'll work whatever I can do to make sure you get your job back. But I'm not saying anything. I don't want another Hilul Hashem." He bit his lip and didn't answer back. He kept quiet. And the Sdei Hamed said, from that day on, all of a sudden, my mind opened up and I became a different person. I became so gifted with Siyati D'Shemaya with help from heaven that I was able to write the Sdei Hamed. This is how he became. He became a success. That's, Rabotai, a lesson for us. Sometimes we think we have the right to say something. We think we have the place to say something. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is running the world. You want to be a friend of God? You want to have the golden hand? You want everything to work out well for you? You listen, and you don't get upset, and you keep quiet. You don't utter a word, and you become El Yasaf ben Reuel. I will tell you, for our last lesson on this week's Parashat. This Parsha starts off with the counting, that there's doing the counting, and it says when. It gives the exact date. LaChodesh HaSheni, Bashana HaShenit. Second month, Iyar, in the second year after they left Mitzrayim. You should do the count. Torah is amazing. It gives you exact date, exact everything. But Rabotai, the Torah never tells us the exact date of Shavuot. Never tells us the exact day of Matan Torah. It tells us 50 days after we left Mitzrayim, we got the Torah. You know, in the past, when the calendar wasn't set the way we have it, when it was done via testimony of the Edom, Shavuot could fall out on different days, not necessarily the 6th of Sivan, 5th, 7th, it could be different. The Torah doesn't give an exact date of when Matan Torah. Here it gives an exact. Why doesn't it give an exact date when it comes to Matan Torah? So Rabotai, I heard such an amazing story to explain this concept. There was a young man and a young girl that they were dating. They liked each other, and they said they're going to get married. Everyone was very happy. The parents were very happy. And this young couple, they wanted a fairy tale wedding. Right? They had the cranes, the drones, they had the flowers flown in that day, right? She prepared her dress. It was it was optical illusions. And he was dressed, whoa, it was just every detail for months. Every detail was planned out exactly, every moment of the wedding. So beautiful, beyond beautiful, the most amazing wedding ever. And that's what they did. And the wedding came. The parents were so nervous everything come out right, and the kids would like it. And but everything went without a hitch. Beautifully, step by step, everything they planned, beautiful. The wedding was amazing. The music, the flowers, the food, whatever's there was the best they could possibly have. Everyone was so happy. It was finally now getting to the end of the wedding. And people were leaving. The band stopped playing. And then the parents are hugging and kissing each other. Everyone's so happy that the wedding went so well. The kids are getting married. And then they see the bride and the groom, the Hatana Kala, the Mot and Kilin, are walking out of the hall. Each one has their own chimadan, each one has their own suitcase, and each one's going into a different car. So the parents and the rabbi, the Masada Kiddushin, says, hey, what's going on? And the young couple says, listen, we agreed to get married, and we wanted a fairy tale wedding. And we did it! It's amazing! Now that's it. Now we're done. Now we're going to go back to our own lives. So we just wanted a beautiful looking wedding. And now we're going to go on with our own lives. She's going with her stuff and I'm going with my stuff. And Rabotai, you can just imagine. The Torah is the wedding. The wedding is meant for what? It'd be foolish for anyone to think they're going to have a big fancy wedding and then they just go back home. The whole point of the wedding was to build a Bayit Ne'eman B'Yisrael. To stay together. To build a Bayit Ne'eman, to build a house. So, says, I forgot who said the story, but they say that that's exactly why there's no date of Matan Torah. Because Hashem doesn't want us. Hashem is downplaying the date. Why? The date's not important when you got the Torah. That's not so important. Okay, make a holiday, but that's not it. The whole point of having the Torah is what? To continue to live with the Torah. Continue to learn the Torah. To continue to live in the ways of Torah. How do we do that? By understanding that the day the Torah is given is every day. It's hidden. We don't know when it is. Why? We don't need to know when it was given. What we need to know that it was given, and we have to use it. Right? This plays a big now idea into marriage. Right? Because if we think about it, we spend so much time preparing for the wedding. How much time do we prepare to actually be a good spouse? Or to actually and the flowers and whatnot that gets thrown out the next moment, right? Maybe invest in a good parenting course or in a good spouse course or in something that can help us become greater people. So, Abatai, to sum up the 3 lessons that we had from this week's Parashat. First of all, we talk about the Midah Mishkal Hasidut, what the Mesilat Yesharim says is the most important. And we should mention that in order to do Mishkal Hasidut, to weigh the options, the person has to become more familiar with halacha, to know what is essential and what is maybe we can move, not do it. Maybe we don't have to fill up the cup the whole way. How much is the Ikar halacha? How much do I really need to fill up the cup? So Revi'it, and figure out what you need to do from there. So you have to know halacha for that. But you have to really weigh the options to see what am I doing is really good, or what I'm doing is the Yetzer Hara dressing it up as good, but really it's an Avedah. And then the second lesson was that how do you become a friend of Hashem and have Hashem on your side helping you with everything that you can do is by when something goes wrong or when something happens you don't like, you keep quiet, you're mevater. When a person does that, Hashem will help him out. And our third lesson was, it's not important to know the date of the Torah was given, but rather what you're going to do with the Torah after you have it. Bez Hashem, we should all be zocheh to a real Kabbalat Torah, right? To coming to Shavuot, Some people say it's cheesecake holiday. Some people say it's the spring holiday, it's the summer holiday. We know it's the Kabbalat Torah holiday. Bez Hashem, we should be zoicha to reach Shavuot with briut, with health, with wealth. Bez Hashem, we should see only good days. Shabbat shalom lekulam.